Welcome to the program A New Race of Humanity. In here we invite viewers to listen to a chronicle of the lives of Baha'is throughout the world who have contributed in some way to the advancement of civilization. We welcome you as we take a journey to the lives of these friends and see how the faith has inspired their lives, how they became Baha'is, and in what capacity they've been able to contribute to the world. And so we would like to welcome, with great thanks and admiration, Dr. Ray Johnson and his beloved wife, Lenema. And welcome and thank you so much for being with us here today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, but also to be here in Phoenix. We came down from Kansas, where we have a lot of freezing weather, and it's nice to be able to take a walk in short sleeves again.
Isn't that great? So I just wanted to say a few words about my impression of your experience. And this is my understanding, is that Dr. Ray Johnson and his wonderful wife were involved with education of children as teachers, administrators, and advisors, counselors throughout your lives. And as Baha'is, you've had a number of unique opportunities, such as director of New Era International School, founding principal of the Maxwell Baha'i School in Canada, and the school board of Townshend International School, and interim director.
That is correct.
You also helped to establish an Institute for Rural Technology and Education for training of teachers in India. So thank you for coming here with such a wide breadth of experience. I'm sure that we'll be enlightened in some way. I wanted to start out with a simple question. I'll go to both of you. How did you become a Baha'i?
That was a very appropriate way to start the interview, because that's discovering the Baha'i faith was a process of so dramatically changing our focus in life and our purpose in life, or knowing our purpose more clearly. We had recently moved to Stanford University, and one day I saw a poster on the wall. It said, "Come to a Baha'i fireside. Learn about the oneness of mankind and the oneness of religion, and the oneness of all the prophets of God." And that sounded very interesting, because it's something that Lenema and I had been discussing for a long time, because we were getting a little bit discouraged with organized religion as such, and we just felt that there was must be more to religion than what we were getting out of it.
So at that point, the Baha'i faith showed some promise.
Yes, it did, because those three principles were already being talked about at home.
Yes.
And so I went home and I said, I saw this poster, and I told her what it was, and I had written down the phone number, and I said, why don't you call and find out when it is, and where it is, and so on, and maybe we should go.
And we studied the Baha'i faith for almost 2 years, and accepted Baha'u'llah as the latest manifestation of God for this day, and we have been Baha'is now since 1968.
Wonderful. And you said you came from a Christian background.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. In fact, Ray's brother was a Christian minister, and he is the first person to even mention the Baha'i faith to us.
Oh, that's unique.
Before we found it, yes.
And I think that's why the poster kind of caught my eye, too. I saw Baha'i, and I said, Baha'i. Then I remembered that that's something that my brother had mentioned that he thought that we should check out.
The trumpets were sounding.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you, this is another one of those foundational questions. What inspired you to go into the path of education?
Well, that's a series of events that took place. It seems like that sometimes when one door closes, another one opens, and that dramatic shift was not something that you had planned. We were both born and raised in the same small town in Oklahoma, Perry, Oklahoma. And I went to the University of Oklahoma for my higher education. I received my bachelor's degree, and at that time I was going into the Marine Corps. And in the process of going into the Marine Corps, on an obstacle course, I tore the ligaments out of my knee. They gave me a medical discharge. What do you do when you have a cast and can't get around? I went back and started my master's degree at the university. And because of certain events at the university, I started taking some education courses, and ended up with a master's degree in education, secondary education. Was offered a job in Colorado, and started my teaching career. And so that's sort of a simple, not a simple accident because it was a bad knee injury, but I was heading down one path and it took me another path, and that's how we ended up in education. It wasn't a huge thing that I was after all of my life to be a teacher. No, it's just one of those doors that opened and I walked through it.
An organic process.
Yes, very much so. Mm.
Now, when we talk about Baha'i schools that you've served on, sometimes we use the words Baha'i inspired. Mm-hmm. So what is the meaning of Baha'i inspired? And how does a Baha'i school differ from maybe a school that's not a Baha'i inspired school?
Okay. First of all, there are many Baha'is that are involved in education because it is a field of service to humanity that is very important as a member of the Baha'i faith. The education of children is a very high station and very high responsibility. So there's a lot of Baha'is that are attracted to the field of education. And in that same way, they would like to improve upon the public educational system because they see that there are things missing in that process of education, which is oriented more on the material side of education rather than there's a balance with the moral or spiritual side of education. So there are a number of Baha'is around the world from time to time that have started endeavors in establishing schools. And there, are countless primary schools, fewer secondary schools, but there are a number of significant schools, in South America and Asia and Africa that are very successful, incorporating Baha'i principles.
Baha'u'llah, who is the founder of the Baha'i faith and the messenger of God for today, as Baha'is believe, is someone who, in the very words revealed by him, praises and lauds education, refers to it as a meritorious deed and meritorious endeavor, right? So that's very, very interesting, and it makes me think a little bit about there's, like you said, a great deal of dedication from Baha'is to, in some way, serve the community through education. And so now I take that back to the Baha'i schools, and I wonder, what are Baha'i schools doing to serve the community in their local areas?
Well, I'll speak about one thing, and then if you want to add to that, Lenema. Okay. You mentioned the word serve humanity. Well, that concept itself of service is very critical in the process of raising our children from a Baha'i perspective. And therefore, in the educational process, the concept of service should be integrated into every school. And so while service today has become popular, even in the public schools, it has always been one of the mandates of and purposes of a Baha'i school is preparing students to serve humanity, and in that process to have organized service opportunities throughout the educational process in that educational environment. And usually it's somehow tied to the community, both the community of the school and the larger community that is around them, and sometimes even beyond that, nationally or internationally, they will go for some service. So you even take a year off from higher education to go and serve in some development project or other Baha'i educational institutions. And so the concept of service and how it relates to Baha'i education or a Baha'i-inspired school is a critical component. So that's only one, but that to me is a very, very important one. You want to add to another one? You got it.
Well, I think another important component would be that when children come to a Baha'i-inspired school, the standard is very high as far as morality. Students, you will not find bullying in a Baha'i-inspired school because the students do not allow it. The respect that they have for each other, the moral character, the development. Kids come there sometimes with low self-esteem, with no self-confidence, but because they are embraced and accepted and loved, they are raised, they're seen as a spiritual being in a physical form.
Exactly.
And they are supported by each other. They have positive peer pressure, as you could call it.
That's wonderful.
And they grow and develop into the most wonderful young men and women. And sometimes they come to the school and they're not like that when they come. Because like I said, they don't have self-esteem or self-confidence. But when they grow in a safe environment like that, they can fulfill their potential.
So for the past 20 years, nestled in an area of the Czech Republic, there is the school, the Townshend International School.
Yes.
What would be a practical application of serving the community in that context?
There are a number of structured programs that are sort of school-based. The students help run what is called the English Corner, so that local community members can come and learn conversational English, which is a high priority in the Czech Republic. They have taken on certain service projects in the community, like the restoration and the upkeep of a Jewish cemetery, which was abandoned after World War II, even though there are a number of Jewish individuals that are buried there, and it has been neglected over the years. And so with the help of the town council and the mayor, the school has taken on the responsibility for the upkeep of that project.
There's also a monthly family day, which is very important to the community of Hoboka, where Townshend International School is. It's a small community of about 5,000 people, but they come to the school, families with their children, once a month for a full day, and they have arts and crafts and music and painting and whatever. And so it's a service for those young children. They range from 2 years to 10 or 12 years. And it's wonderful to see the young people from the school, the students, planning the entire day, taking on that project, and just being with those children for a full day.
Then there are several different types of service projects which you would even find in a public school. They have a relationship with a couple of orphanages, and they go and they tutor and they visit them on a regular basis. So throughout the year, the same kids have developed relationship, with children in the orphanages, in a children's hospital, They go through, and every week, you know, they go in and they sing songs and play games and talk to kids that are in the hospital and try to keep their spirits up and so on. And then sometimes the community turns to the school. And for example, there is an English medium Czech school not too far from us, from the Townshend School. And we have developed relationships where our students go for some sporting events there, and they come to our school, and they have participated in a number of off-campus activities that they would go to together. And that relationship where this other school can, the students that are learning English will have a Townshend student to interact with and so on. So there's a variety of things.
Sounds like a symbiotic relationship.
Very much so. The community loves us, and our students have grown to build very strong relationships with a number of the community members too.
So the impact on the community is enormous, but probably the impact on those youngsters is reciprocal.
Yeah. One of the things about service, there's a powerful feeling of altruistic behavior that we cannot anticipate the impact of a child starting to engage and go to a home of the elderly and play checkers with an individual, and every Saturday go and play checkers, go for walks with the individual and so on, bond with that individual, and that service takes on over time an effect, a transformation effect on the person that's giving the service, to where it starts to make them feel good about that activity. And they move from doing it out of duty to doing it out of love, and then suddenly that love for that feeling becomes a way of life, that you're doing it just because it's the right thing to do. And that we see that transformation over a year or two with so many students that were bored, getting into mischief or whatever, and suddenly that takes the place of all of that other behavioral acting out that was going on.
And to do that without expect for anything in return.
Yeah. It's just, it feels good, and I want to feel good. Now, subconsciously, that's what is transparent. You know, they're not thinking, oh, I feel good, therefore I should do more of that. But it's an unconscious thing that takes place, and then it becomes part of who they are.
Now, I'm a graduate of the International Baccalaureate program, Baccalaureat International. So that leads me to wonder, what is the curriculum that's used in Baha'i-inspired schools? And you can give us the benefit of the example of Townshend as well.
We'll start with Townshend. The International Baccalaureate is probably in my mind, the highest level of international education for international schools that one can aspire to. It's an outstanding curriculum, and it is probably more supportive of the principles of the faith and education than any other thing that is out there. Townshend has that in their master plan. It's a goal yet to be achieved. Where they are now, they have been on the Czech educational system to start with. Over the last few years, it has made the transition to the Cambridge International Examination. And so it is at this point in time is a British international school, in that it teaches a British system and does the O levels and A levels. All right, which is for in an American system is step up from the American system, and so usually with A levels, you can skip the first year of university courses here in a number of areas. So someone that has 3 or 4 A levels usually just skips the freshman year and goes right into the sophomore year of most colleges and universities in the West. And then you said in Baha'i-inspired school. Now that's where Townshend is right now. It is offers the Cambridge International Examination. Therefore, the curriculum leads to that examination accreditation program. But it has down the pipeline as we grow, and because it is a more expensive program, and it will need higher level teachers and other types of things, labs and so on that have to be developed and built. It is down the pipeline for another 3 to 5 years at least. However, there are international Baha'i schools that do offer IB programs, and there are many schools that offer whatever is required by the local governments. So you will have some American-oriented curriculums that are in Africa. You will have South American systems in Brazil. There's a wonderful Baha'i-inspired school called the School of the Nations in Brasilia, Brazil. And they offer, the Brazilian educational system. And so there's not one set answer, or one set curriculum rather, for all Baha'i-inspired schools. But the basic principles of Baha'i education, of teaching and learning the application of the virtues and the attributes of God, is applicable to all of them.
So in your assessment, would you say that the level of achievement of the Baha'i schools has been quite great for such a short time of the history of a Baha'i community?
Yes, I would say that is true. Many of the students who have graduated from these Baha'i-inspired schools come to the West, and usually in math and science particularly, they're about 2 years ahead. It's quite a rigorous academic program, and students work very hard, and they have a lot of support from each other. And in those small schools like that, and residential schools in particular, the teachers are there, in the evenings, on the weekends, helping them because they live there. So they have an extra bonus to have more help from their teachers than just a day school.
It's probably as much, if not a more important factor, is not the academic achievement, which is there, the standard of excellence, but it's the behavior change that comes about in relationship of students understanding their purpose in life, who they are, and taking on, those important attributes, of trustworthiness and truthfulness and respect and so on, and applying, learning that those are important, virtues of behavior and who they are, and being in an environment where those are reinforced, so that when they go out into the world, that's who they are. And that's the impact that you will see the greatest, that person is different than the rest of the kids.
Spiritual identity.
And so you can call it spiritual, but it is definitely a moral code that starts to guide their lives.